here we have our mostly colored flag design. Since it's almost October, Day of the Dead stuff is one of my favorite things to do. I created this Day of the Dead pattern design, and today I'm going to do something creative with it. This is a project that is really easy to do. All you need is the drawn skull, and then I just added different types of line to the skull itself, so different patterns, shapes, etc. Then I took that design and I transferred it to this cloth material, but this is just traced on there. You can just trace it because this is pretty see-through. But we're going to do something fun with it. In spirit of Day of the Dead coming up, we're going to make a cute piece of fabric art with this. And these are the materials that you're going to use. A Sharpie, of course, if you need to trace. And we're going to start with some oil pastels. And then you're also going to use either watercolor and just some regular markers. Or you could use watercolor or acrylic paint, whatever you'd like to use. Now that I have it laid flat, I'm just going to take my oil pastel and start laying in color. So you can pretty much color this however you'd like. But one of the cool things about oil pastels is that it's going to leave a nice waxy surface that you can blend really easily with your fingers or with Q-tips, etc. And when we go to add our markers and watercolor in the background, as you'll see, it'll be easy to preserve what you designed in the actual face because of the waxy substance that is, or the quality of the oil pastel to kind of fill in the color. So you don't even have to press that hard. It's pretty easy to blend in here or to lay down color. And for me, I'm not really worried so much about fully filling this in. You could also use acrylics, but I thought it would be fun to use a different type of medium. I used to do this with my kids and they love this project. I think mostly because they got to use fabric and stuff that they're not normally using in an art class. So not paper, etc. So it's a really popular project. And you could use it for when you're finished, make a pillow or sew into something. So there's a lot of different uses that you can have for this. So I'm just going to speed through the rest of the video so that you don't have to wait for me to finish coloring this, but you get the point. You're just going to use your oil pastels to fill in color, and then you can add little highlights. So for example, I've done my flowers here and maybe I want to add some shadowing. So it's not just a flat color. I started off with yellow. I can take an orange and maybe just darken it up where the flowers are meeting the middle a little bit, just to give it some depth. And you would do that all over. So lay down a flat color, give it some contrast with a darker color or a highlight with the lighter color. You could even use opposite colors, but you get the point. So that's a little bit more vibrant than just a flat yellow. So I'm just going to continue going and working all over my page, and then I'll come back whenever I'm done and I'll show you what else we do with this. I've gone ahead and covered most of the design with the oil pastels. I would recommend, which is something that I should have done, is to work the white first before you lay out the color, just so it's a little bit easier. And then if you need to go back over the individual lines to thicken up or darken up the blacks, etc., over the oil pastels. Now I'm going to show you what the next step is. Now I'm just going to fill out in the background. And you can just fill this in with patterns and designs, flowers, whatever you want. So I'm going to be adding different flowers across the space. I'm using a Sharpie, and I'm just going to fill these in. And I'm going to add a few at the bottom. And I'm going to draw in some petals. If you want to use a stencil, you can do that. Or you can just create your own designs. It doesn't have to be flowers. You can pretty much add whatever you want. But this is for you. There's a little wonky flower. And as you can see, my flowers are not perfect. There's my flowers. They're kind of not perfect, but it's okay. This is just more for fun. As you can see, I'm just coloring loosely. I'm going to fill out the rest of my flowers. They're not perfect, but this is just some background filler. As I'm coloring this, I'm not really concerned about staying in the lines or anything. I'm being really careful because this is more expressive. But at the end, we're going to tie it all together. So I'm almost done here. And as I'm coloring, I'm just following the shape of the petals. Just putting color in there. Wherever I add this crayon, it's going to act as a resist. So any color that I put on top of it, which you'll see in a minute, is going to repel the color where the wax is. I used to teach this lesson, oops, it broke, with my art students whenever we were studying line repetition and patterns. And then we would tie it in with a cultural lesson about the Day of the Dead festival. And this was one of the favorite activities or projects that we used to work on in class. And I think primarily because they get to work on a different medium that's not just paper. That's always exciting. The most engaged projects or lessons were usually the ones that had more hands-on and different types of materials like clay, this project, different other projects where they're not just coloring or drawing, they're creating something that they get to keep. That was always fun and exciting. So now that I have all my flowers laid out, the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back with a Sharpie. And remember, this is yours. There's no right or wrong. You can use any size. I think I'm going to use this one just for speed. But I'm just going to lay in some of those same types of swirly lines. And again, don't worry about perfection. The marker is going to bleed a little bit, and that's okay. So I'm just going to join these flowers here. And I'm just doing loops and swirls. And you can just run it off the page. You can have them coming from any direction. And actually, you can create whatever patterns you like. I like these swirly lines because they're easy. The marker is really easy to use on the fabric, and it's permanent. I'm just going to add a few up here. And you can branch off of these as well. So let's see. I think I'm going to add a few here. Just kind of branching out. There is no right or wrong. Just add to it as you please. And if you mess up, it's okay. This is for you. And it's just a lesson on expression, creativity. So now we have our mostly finished design. You can go back and thicken things up where you need to. I think I'm just going to add a few more swirls that connect. There. So now I'm good with that. The last thing that I'm going to do is use my Crayola markers to give it a little bit of color. So for that, I'm going to move outside. Here we have our mostly colored flag design. And I say flag, you can pretty much use this for whatever, but let's move outside. Now I have my design, and I started laying out some marker, but I didn't like that for the background. So I took some tempera paint and added it to water, and I'm just going to mist the background. Make sure you use a better water bottle than I have. This isn't exactly what I wanted, but I just want it to be a light pink in the background. So as you can see, this isn't exactly working. Get a better spray bottle, but where I added the oil pastels, it's giving me a resist, so it's not dyeing that. So I'm just going to keep spraying all across, and I'll come back with the finished product. Okay, now I have all of my background, that light pink, and I'm just going to go in here and lay my marker down so it can, while it's wet, add some touches of color that are just a little bit darker, just in a few spots, just to lay some color. You don't have to do this step, but see how I'm laying out this just a little bit in certain places. It's not everywhere. I'm just kind of rub it. Now I'm just going to go and just add a teensy bit of green in a couple of spots. I'm using these old Crayola markers. They really spread out pretty well. I think that's good.